a well-oiled go-to-market machine if the input is bad data. Everything else, falls flat, especially as you see people start to leverage, the new generation of AI tools, whether it's for email marketing or for automated prospecting or even sales forecasting, right? All of these different components to holistic go-to-market motion don't work if you can't get the data right. You can't predict revenue if you don't know where the people that are buying your products are going to be. You can't predict churn if you don't understand that the person who bought your product 9 months ago has since left the company and you're dealing with a new decision maker.
Welcome to ThriveCast. Our today's topic is PLG and the importance of the live enrichment. And we have Jason from Live Data Technologies. He's also a blogger. I recently found him on Human Capital. And Jason, before we jump into the topic, could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Guru. Excited to be here. Excited to talk PLG and contact data enrichment. We initially met each other because you read my post on the shrinking universe of SaaS seat licenses, and really that leads pretty well into what we do at Live Data. We're a real-time job change data provider, and when we have real-time job change data for 90 plus million people, there are all sorts of implications for SaaS tools, GTM tools, PLG motions, and data enrichment, but we also get to have the ability to ask questions of that data set, which is where human capitalists came from. It's the idea that people are the single biggest driver of economic movement. And when people are changing jobs in real time, you can start to ask questions like, how many seat licenses are there if you're a go-to-market SaaS provider trying to sell a solution and thinking that your market is going to grow as the universe of seats grows. And then all of a sudden you get to late 2022 and teams start to return to rigor, think about how they're going to best find efficiency. And a lot of that happened through cutting headcount and getting leaner, meaner, and more efficient in terms of their go-to-market teams, which meant a lot of entry to mid-level sales and marketing roles disappeared. And a lot of the SaaS companies that were predicating their growth models on just landing and expanding and having a natural expansion of users at a given account, we'll probably have to rethink that pricing model. So that's one example of a bunch of the questions that we can ask and answer with this data outside of what we can do for the contact data consumers.
So I think that's a good segue to the listeners. Jason and I, we met on LinkedIn, and the blog post was an eye-opener for me, right? So there's a number of seat licenses, seat-based licensing starting to have a downward dip. I knew that's what is happening with sales and marketing folks leaving companies or getting laid off. So I constantly always wondered, and when I met Jason, that's the first thing that we touched upon. So Jason, before we jump into the topic, could you maybe describe to the audience what does it mean by lead enrichment? And we'll take it from there. And could you also tie in the aspects of how it was done earlier in the SLG world, right? Meaning a sales-led company wants to do a lead enrichment. How would they potentially go approach it? Whereas with the product-led era starting to latch in, why is it crucial for data enrichment to be part and parcel of the PLG itself? Maybe touch that upon as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we think about the original way in which lead enrichment was done, you had someone who came to a website and was a hand raiser of sorts. They gave you an email, they filled out a form, they tried to unlock a piece of gated content, and then within a CRM, they were tagged as a lead. Right? They became hot to trot, I think, as we might say, and it was on a sales rep to reach out and facilitate the rest of their buyer's journey. And adding more and more pieces of information gave a sales rep more and more ammunition to reach out and to tailor their outreach and be personal. With that, when we think about how this works in a PLG world, where you don't have quite as many individual touch points with the customer, or at least person-to-person touch points with a customer or potential customer, you have to start to get smart at how a computer can automate this system and can really think about all of the things that you can know about a customer as you facilitate that journey without having the direct feedback or relying on the human in the loop to push that journey forward. Okay, so looking at things like company size, company level indicators and signals and other sales triggers. Did that person just change jobs? Are they just joining this company and evaluating a new tool? Is it someone who's used this tool previously and now had a job change event and is already familiar? How can you best leverage that signal? And really thinking about all of the different things that you can know about a customer when they come to you and give you one snippet of information what the rest of the universe of information you can know about that potential customer might be. And I guess the company or account that they represent.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is in the traditional SLG world, all the enrichment was happening outside of the product itself. The CRM and tools like that were used to go ahead and capture the contact, if you will, understand who these users were, who these contacts were, where they work, and essentially being able to go figure out what their role is, know much about them, but being able to use this information for sales conversations. But I think in what you mentioned about PLGs, now this is happening more and more inside of the product to being able to automatically be able to personalize the experiences associated if they are, let's say, the finance person or HR person, bringing specific use cases associated to within the product itself, being able to personalize that becomes important. So better targeting within the product itself becomes more imperative. Could you maybe paint a picture a little bit on if this trend is like an in-product data enrichment versus outside of the product data enrichment for the SLG? Is that a secular trend? Is that a definitive trend that you see in the market?
I think the way I think about it is to think about the number of products I use, or to ask someone to think about the number of products that they use where they've never talked to they've never interacted with a person in order to get into the product and start experiencing the product and realizing the benefits. So I can go in, I can pick Acme widgets that helps me schedule LinkedIn posts, and I can sign up and give them my email, put in a credit card, or maybe it's a freemium model, and never interact with someone face to face. And everything has to happen in a more automated fashion because no one has the conversational layer and the true, almost emotional layer that you get when you talk to someone in, like we are face to face. I think about the original or old school way of doing sales calls in the SLG motion, where sellers, build these personal bonds with their customers. And that's what drives the sales process forward as much as the true delivery of value. Now with PLG, it's the true delivery of value that catalyzes the rest of the sales process, and allowing better data to support all of the different things you can pick up on to start to tailor an app or an experience to that more personal side of things. And maybe it's both the qualitative and the quantitative. It's the personal side and the ability to then layer in, we know these things about the company. We know these things about the person from their job history or their intent signals elsewhere. That really allows the supercharging of the process.
Yeah, so maybe let's dive a little more deeper into this. Let's take this example of what you mentioned about the Acme widgets. Today, if Jason goes to Acme Widgets, let's say acmewidgets.com, and you sign up, sometimes Acme Widgets will ask you a series of questions, meaning, hey, who are you? What's your first name? What's your email ID? Sometimes they will ask you about your role or a title of the company, which company you belong to. Right? These are explicit answers that you might give directly to Acme Widgets. Versus there might be implicit enrichment that Acme Widgets might do behind the scenes as well. So they might go and find out based on the email ID, okay, who's this? Who's Jason? What's his real company that he's working at? Although he might give some answers on the front end, just verifying that. Have you seen the data enrichment that's coming more implicitly being used to personalize any experiences, or have you seen more and more by, hey, let's ask that question directly to Jason and then use that information to personalize based on whatever he says? Which of these two signals are becoming more important to personalize?
I think as we think about the sales funnel for most PLG motions especially, you're trying to get the person to the product as fast as possible. You're not trying to ask them and flood them with questions before they get in. So the implicit signals and the ability to access more and more data on that person to tune it for them predictively versus to say, please fill out this 3-minute questionnaire before I even get you to the product. People don't have the patience for that anymore. You think about people who won't watch a 60-second YouTube video. They'll fast forward to the part 40 seconds in that they really are interested in. I think most people want to get to whatever they're trying to get to as fast as possible, and using data enrichment to speed up that process for them without them ever knowing really allows you to supercharge your efforts, which I think might be my punchline for this entire episode, is that lead enrichment and better data is a supercharger, right? It's not going to fix problems or make something that's not so good, but it really allows you to fine tune and add that extra oomph that a supercharger would, to use an automotive analogy.
Lead enrichment as a supercharger. That's a nice punchline.
There you go.
Let me add maybe 2 layers into this. I think the first layer that you talked about is supercharging the in-product experiences. Okay. And you also mentioned about supercharging the account-based or sales-led conversations with the customer based on this implicit lead enrichment signal. So I think there's both, right? Maybe if I can call it in-product experiences, that's more PLG. And out of product experiences or account-based marketing, that's more for SLG. So it looks like lead enrichment plays a major role in both of these. And maybe that's why supercharging is the right word for something of that sort.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about it and think about the sales models for a lot of companies now, there's a freemium PLG offering. And once you have enough signal that there are people at that account or people at that company, whether it's one super user at a big enough company that has budget for it, or 10 super users all on the same team at a given company, or one person where the company reaches a milestone. I think about one person in finance and the company reaches a milestone where now, instead of that person in finance having to manage payroll for 10 people, they have to manage it for 100 people. And having that signal that's automatically enriched becomes this way to help move people along towards bigger and bigger deals, bigger and bigger accounts, and really figure out where along the continuum of person level effort or manual rep effort a given account or given customer falls.
Maybe let's talk about the account-based aspect, and then let's maybe switch over to the SLG world for a moment, right? And we'll take the thread that you just talked about. Let's take an example. Let's say Jason at livetechnologies.com signed up to Acme Widgets. So Live Data Technologies is the company that you're working for, and that's the domain of an email ID. So Acme Widgets will probably do a lookup on who's Jason is. Do they also do a lookup on where does he work and who's Live Data Technologies? I'm guessing that's the second part. That's the account portion of the enrichment.
They should be.
They should not. Would you say that this was happening previously as well in the SLG world, wherein a user, let's say Jason, goes to some marketing web page, fills up a form, downloads some information, and somehow Jason's information gets registered as a contact into HubSpot or Salesforce or what you may? There's not much information about where Jason works. It's mostly about that there's Jason, right? There's nothing much about the account. Somebody has to manually do a lookup. And I guess there were many tools earlier, right? You could have Clearbit or so many other tools. So could do a manual lookup towards that. I'm guessing that will still continue. But if you add the PLG component to it, do the sales team get additional lookup aspects alongside with contact and the account and bring both of these signals together? So have you seen that happen? Could you maybe share an example where the account information is as relevant and maybe not as relevant, maybe a lot more relevant than the contact information? Do you have an example where account has become more primary than the contact?
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe going back to where we started and talking about the seat licenses and thinking about how companies will, sell into an account, right? If you target accounts that have 3 to 5 sales reps because you sell a sales prospecting tool or a platform or your Salesforce or HubSpot and you sell per seat user licenses, to know when a company hits that threshold that you're looking for. To be able to understand, okay, I'm not selling a solution to any individual SDR or BDR. I'm selling the solution to the sales manager that manages 3 to 5 or 8 to 10 or to 50 or however many SDRs they have on their team, right? To understand the account level signal for when they hit that threshold that puts them into your world is far more important than understanding exactly who that one SDR was. So looking at the aggregate view from the account level makes it far more important. And thinking about the PLG version of this, if you have one sales rep that's using the tool because they signed up and they're trying to meet their quota and this is something that they found on their own and they put in a credit card for $20 a month and they've been using it and getting a lot of value out of it, understanding that trying to sell that tool to the one other sales guy on that team, okay, now you're making $40. But if all of a sudden that company goes through a massive growth phase and hires 8 or 9 or 10 more sales reps, you can now move into, okay, I want to sell this company. I want to find the leader and the key decision maker at this company and find the person to sell the enterprise plan, not just 3 extra $20 plans. Now I want to sell them the $800 a month or $1,000 a month solution that we have for enterprise or a company on their way to being an enterprise.
That's interesting. What you're saying is that if Jason signs up to Acme, Jason is just one of the users to Acme. Acme should be able to go look up how many such JSONs might be there in the company that they can sell to. So it's an account-based lookup. At that given moment, when Jason signed up, there might be two sales guys, let's say, using Acme. Acme taking an effort to go reach out to Jason or his leadership team, say, hey, can you buy 10 licenses? May not be logical, but because the account is showing that, hey, there's only 2 reps in the company. So spending that time and reaching out may not yield much results. But I think that's where I'm just tying that in my head. That's where I think the job change signals might become more useful. Let's say 2 or 3 months later, let's say this account that Jason is now working at suddenly adds about 5 or 6 other sales guys to it. So the number of seats have now changed. The account should potentially become a lot more laden with, hey, there's a lot more potential than 3 months earlier. There were max of 2 people. Now there's about 7 or 8 other people joining the team. So it looks like if you tie the account-based signals and the job change signals together, there's a lot more value to be given back to the sales rep, which means that lead scoring or account-based scoring will become much more rich. Is that what you see out there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the transition between where do you go from ones and twos from a PLG motion to how do we scale this to the account that needs the sales touch. There are clearly indicators and signals and triggers that every account will undergo where, okay, I'm not going to do anything to try to move along Acme widgets with one sales rep when that first sales rep signs up. But now that I know that Acme widgets and this sales rep that's a power user is in my universe, I can know and get real-time data on when they start adding other people at that company that might benefit from my solution. And to be able to tap that company on the shoulder or to figure out how to get in touch with the person who's the power user and the person who's the decision maker and the person who has the economic buying power to implement this more broadly becomes super valuable to move from the initial PLG phase into something that maybe has more of a hybrid component, or maybe it's automated, right? There are worlds in which all you have to do is recognize these signals and send the email to the decision maker and say, we've noticed that for 3 months now, James Smith, your super duper SDR, has been winning deals because of our tool, or your one engineer has found massive efficiency improvements because of our Copilot tool, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Hey, now that you've hired 5 people in the last 6 months, we have a solution for everyone that helps unify and integrate and fits into your growth strategy this much better.
That's an ideal world. That's a beautiful world to be in. I think supercharging the way to go get to that state is going to be amazing. Let me ask maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and we'll soon run out of time today. What role do you think data enrichment is going to be used for? Have you seen data enrichment tools used by the sales team, the marketing teams, the STR teams? Is there one role within the company that's using it? Are they buying multiple tools, multiple products, or they're all coming together to use a single tool? What do you see? Which roles do you see play a significant role in consuming the data that comes from enrichment?
I think the blessing and the curse here is that everyone has to use it because all of your go-to-market efforts fail if you have bad data or you don't have the data, right? It becomes massively inefficient to have a rep to waste. If you have 5 sales reps and your contact data is 20 to 30% out of date, you're wasting one of those 5 reps 20% of your time, 20% of your resources to prospect or try to connect with your leads that have changed jobs, changed companies, changed roles. Really, I think to me, the answer is everyone uses it in an ideal world because it's what allows you these massive efficiencies. You can't have a well-oiled go-to-market machine if the input is bad data. Everything else falls flat, especially as you see people start to leverage the new generation of AI tools, whether it's for email marketing or for automated prospecting or even sales forecasting. All of these different components to the holistic go-to-market motion don't work if you can't get the data. You can't predict revenue if you don't know where the people that are buying your products are going to be. You can't predict churn if you don't understand that the person who bought your product 9 months ago has since left the company and you're dealing with a new decision maker. You can't prospect to someone if you're sending them an email to the wrong email address that the company's kept live, or because most companies keep emails live and just forward them to someone else. Or now with the updates to Outreach and Google's new email policies, you start to run up against, are we going to hit the 5% email bounce rate that's going to get us put in timeout? You can't effectively target your audience as a marketer if you don't know who they are or where they are. Are they still at a company that's in market for your product, or have they since moved to a role that in a company that's has no use for your accounting software for barbershops because now they work at a Foot Locker or a shoe store, right? And everything falls flat when you don't know where the people that you're trying to reach are.
That makes sense. That made perfect sense. Let me build upon the last question that I asked. If there were so many such users, the SDRs, the marketing teams, the sales teams, there could be maybe even customer success for retention or whatever that might be. If there are so many users for data enrichment, or at least the output from the data enrichment, who's actually the buyer? Have you seen in typical SaaS companies, slightly bigger, is the buyer more on the marketing side, or is the buyer on the sales side? Or have you seen it go to a CRO or something like that? Who's the buyer for tools like these in the market?
I think it depends on the company. I think hopefully what happens is you get holistic buy-in from multiple stakeholders on the go-to-market team, right? Especially because you think about the way that a modern go-to-market motion works. Sales and marketing and RevOps and CS for that matter should all be holding hands. They should all be best friends to understand how do we get someone from on the marketing side, having never heard about our company, all the way to being a high NRR, high lifetime value customer on the CS side of things, with touch points from sales to get the deal closed and a handoff and lead routing and deal routing from a RevOps person that eventually puts them into CS's world. And then you start to understand, how do we get them retained and how do we grow the account? Really, in an ideal world, someone like a CRO owns the data side of things, or is at least super bought into having a strong data foundation for their go-to-market team.
Yeah, this is amazing. I wasn't aware that even RevOps and CSM or CSA teams can potentially use it. That's wonderful news to me. I know we are out of time. And I think maybe a couple of takeaways, I'm just trying to summarize it in my head. Lead generation is essentially the supercharger and bridges the gap between PLG and SLG. Okay, I think that's probably that should be the podcast name as well. The second point that you mentioned is that account-based marketing is changing. If you are able to do a lookup between the account to the contact, where the contact works at, and that's the account, and how many people are potential buyers, if it is primarily a seat-based licensing deal that you're going for. In that case, change history or job change history are very important signals for that. I think the third thing that you mentioned is there are multiple users within the company. Could be sales, marketing, RevOps, CSM, even support ticket, technical support, all of these. But typically the buyers are either in the marketing, sales, or on the CRO side. And if CRO can actually go and make sure that the data is spread across all of these particular horizontals or verticals within the company, that will play well. So again, thanks so much for your time. Hopefully I summarized it well. Jason, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to be on, Guru. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to hearing the episode and talking more about superchargers.
Let's supercharge our way. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See ya.